Have you ever found yourself just caught in that relentless cycle of worry, that kind of gnawing sense of unease that makes sleep impossible and just leaves you feeling constantly on edge?
Oh, absolutely. It's a feeling so many people can relate to. And
Yeah,
look, a certain amount of worry is completely normal. It's our brain's way of reacting to challenges. It's protective, even.
right.
But there's definitely a point where these emotions, they become so persistent, so overwhelming, they really start to impact your daily life.
Hmm.
That's when they cross the line from just normal unease into, well, an anxiety disorder.
And that's exactly what we want to unpack today. This deep dive, it's built around a really comprehensive guide that's designed to help you navigate what the source calls energetic overwhelm and spiritual challenges.
Right.
So our mission really is to pull out the most impactful insights and practical strategies from this material to help you not just understand anxiety, but maybe truly begin to overcome it.
And there's a really powerful message woven through this material. It's one of profound hope, actually. Okay. If you're grappling with anxiety, it is remarkably treatable,
Yeah.
often through lifestyle changes that are maybe surprisingly quite accessible.
That's great to hear. So let's start mapping this out.
Let's do it.
It's interesting how often we hear people use stress and anxiety almost like interchangeably.
Yes, all the time.
But our source here makes a very clear distinction. So what's the real danger then if that initial stress response isn't managed? If that adrenaline just keeps pumping?
That's a really critical question. Stress, like our source explains, is that natural response to daily pressures, right? It triggers adrenaline.
Hmm.
We feel weary because our body is basically on high alert.
Right.
The danger, the real shift, happens when that adrenaline persists. That can lead to a whole cascade effect: depression, increased blood pressure, and yeah, eventually clinical anxiety.
Wow.
It really highlights that while stress is more of a reaction, anxiety can actually become a chronic condition.
And if you're experiencing this, you are absolutely definitely not alone. The scale of this challenge is, well, it's striking.
It really is.
According to the National Institute of Mental Health, over 40 million American adults, that's roughly 18% of the adult population, experience some form of anxiety.
18%.
Yeah, it's actually identified as the most common mental illness in the U.S.
And that raises such an important point.
Yeah.
How does this condition fundamentally impact your life?
Yeah.
Our source points out that anxiety doesn't just make you feel uncomfortable, it actively blocks your potential.
How so?
Well, it leads to hesitation in making decisions, maybe a reluctance to embrace life changes. And when that's coupled with a negative mindset, it can be a huge barrier to success.
And it's also kind of insidious in how it erodes your self-esteem, right? Your confidence.
Totally. Your mind gets filled with this constant stream of negative thoughts, just undermining your sense of self-worth, your capabilities.
And the impact isn't just mental, is it?
No, not at all. It manifests physically too. Things like persistent headaches, muscle tension that just becomes chronic,
Mm.
a profound inability to concentrate or sleep or even maintain healthy eating habits. Your body is just always on high alert.
That idea of self-blame you mentioned, that's particularly insidious, isn't it?
It really
It's
is.
like a double burden. You're struggling with the anxiety itself, and then you're judging yourself for it.
Exactly.
Our source points out this is often a protective response.
Mhm.
But why do you think so many people still fall into that trap? Internalizing the blame, fearing judgment.
Well, it often stems from maybe a societal discomfort with vulnerability, or perhaps past experiences where emotions were dismissed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
People fear being seen as weak, so they internalize the struggle. But the good news, and the source strongly emphasizes this, is the sheer amount of research now available.
Okay.
Medical professionals have a much, much deeper understanding. And while maybe a cure isn't the right word right now, there are highly effective treatments that can significantly improve your quality of life.
So with a clear map of anxiety's territory and its various forms, the crucial next step is,
Yeah.
what can we actually do about it?
Right.
Our deep dive pivots now to practical empowerment, starting with understanding the different forms anxiety can take. Many of you listening are probably familiar with the big categories, right? Like general anxiety disorder, that pervasive, hard to pin down worry,
Hmm.
or panic disorder with its sudden intense attacks. But our source digs into some really insightful details within each type.
Absolutely. Let's start with general anxiety disorder, or GAD. What really distinguishes it is this long-lasting, often unrealistic worry over lots of different things: career, money, family, school.
So it's not just one thing.
Exactly. A key characteristic is the difficulty pinpointing a specific fear. The worry itself feels kind of diffuse, hard to control.
Okay.
Symptoms often include headaches, irritability, trouble sleeping, maybe an upset stomach. It affects around 3% of the U.S. population, and nearly half of those are women.
Then there's panic disorder, marked by those, well, frankly, terrifying panic attacks.
Yeah.
These sudden, overwhelming surges of fear, often peaking within minutes, can feel like you're losing control or even dying. Trembling, heart palpitations, shortness of breath are common symptoms.
And what's particularly insightful from our source here is the distinction.
Mm.
Unlike maybe an anxiety attack, which might follow a specific stressor,
Right.
a panic attack can strike without any clear trigger, seemingly out of the blue.
That's important. Okay, what else?
Another common form is social anxiety disorder. And this isn't just being shy.
Well,
It's an intense avoidance of social situations driven by this profound fear of negative judgment or public humiliation.
like stage fright, maybe?
Yeah, stage fright is one example, but also just avoiding group conversations. It can cause extreme physical symptoms, racing heart, nausea, sweating.
Wow.
Our source notes that for a diagnosis, these symptoms have to persist for at least 6 months and really get in the way of daily life. It affects about 15 million American adults, often starting in the teenage years.
Our source also details phobias. This is an irrational, often debilitating fear of specific objects or situations. Think beyond just, a healthy respect for heights. This is where the thought of being on a tall building might paralyze you, even if you're safely inside.
Right, the fear itself triggers uncontrollable anxiety and leads to extreme avoidance.
And like social anxiety, diagnosis requires the fear to last at least 6 months and negatively impact your daily function.
Yeah, and these are quite prevalent, actually. In the Western world, they affect maybe 8–10% of the population, and they can stem from both direct trauma or even witnessing something traumatic.
Then there's obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD.
Right. Here, the core is distressing, repetitive thoughts. Those are the obsessions that lead to repetitive actions, the compulsions.
Okay.
The source highlights that sufferers often intellectually know their compulsions are irrational.
They know it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. But the overwhelming anxiety dictates their actions, forcing them to, say, constantly check locks or engage in really elaborate cleaning rituals.
We also delve into post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. This form of anxiety is deeply rooted in a previous life-threatening or profoundly traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And while it's often associated with military service, our source makes it clear. It can affect anyone who has experienced significant trauma.
Absolutely. And it leads to debilitating panic attacks when triggered by reminders of that event.
And finally, separation anxiety disorder.
This is that intense panic people experience when separated from a person or a place or even a thing that provides comfort.
Like toddlers and their caregivers.
Yeah, that's the common example. But the underlying mechanism that panic triggered by losing a security anchor is important to understand across the board.
Okay, so regardless of the specific type, our source points to a kind of constellation of common symptoms that might signal an underlying anxiety disorder. Things like persistent feelings of panic, excessive worry you just can't turn off, chronic sleep problems, shortness of breath, tense muscles, indigestion, fatigue, feeling extremely self-conscious.
Compulsive behaviors, too.
Right. Compulsive behaviors, dizziness, nausea, or maybe cold and sweaty hands.
Yeah. If you experience these regularly, that's a really clear signal to consult with your doctor.
Okay, so moving beyond just identifying the challenge, our deep dive now shifts to empowering tools, things you can actually do.
Exactly.
And the source frames mindfulness as a truly foundational practice, emphasizing being, quote, fully awake and fully active and present in our day-to-day lives.
It's about cultivating conscious, non-judgmental attention to your internal and external experiences. What's happening right now?
And this isn't just about, feeling calmer in the moment, is it? It's about inserting a vital pause between an impulse and your reaction.
Precisely. Our source highlights how mindfulness builds that space. It allows you to choose a response rather than just reacting on autopilot.
Like the difference between being swept away by waves and consciously deciding how to ride it.
That's a great analogy. And the benefits go way beyond just mental calm. Mindfulness helps relieve physical stress, actively preventing health issues linked to chronic stress, like high blood pressure, obesity, heart disease.
Wow.
And critically, by training your focus on the present without judgment, it helps eliminate that relentless churn of worries that can fuel depression and other mental disorders.
Building on that, the power of your breath is another incredible tool, often overlooked, I think.
Definitely. Our source details how stress fundamentally changes your breathing pattern, pushing it to those shallow, shoulder-based breaths.
Right, you can feel it in your shoulders sometimes.
Exactly. And this disrupts the delicate balance of gases in your body and directly makes anxiety symptoms worse.
But this is where the insight comes in, right?
Yeah.
Conscious control over your breathing can profoundly manage stress and related conditions like anxiety and depression.
Yes. It's why practices like yoga and Tai Chi rely so heavily on it. Physiologically, deliberate breathing helps reduce blood pressure, decrease heart rate, lower stress hormones,
Okay.
and dramatically increase feelings of calmness.
Our source uses a great analogy for these sister systems in our body.
Ah,
The parasympathetic nervous system, our calm and restore mode, and the sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight engine.
the crazy non-sympathetic sister, as the source puts it.
Ha, right. And deep breathing acts like a direct lever on that calm system, while shallow breathing inadvertently fuels the fight or flight response.
And what's truly remarkable, as the source points out, is that breathing is the only body function we can readily control to directly influence these two critical systems.
That's huge.
It is. And our source details 3 deep breathing exercises that directly leverage this control. First, coherent breathing.
Okay, how does that work?
You inhale to a count of 5 and then exhale to a count of 5, aiming for about 5 complete breaths per minute.
5 in, 5 out.
Exactly. This optimizes something called heart rate variability, or HRV. Basically, a higher HRV means a more adaptable nerve system, better able to switch between stress and relaxation.
So it's like a biological upgrade for handling anxiety.
You could say that, yeah, it's a key biomarker for resilience.
Okay, what's next?
Then there's resistance breathing. This is where you narrow the air pathway. For example, breathing through your nose instead of your mouth, or even using a straw.
Interesting.
Our source also points out that things like chanting or singing can achieve a similar effect because they narrow your vocal cords. Adds a meditative element, too.
And the third one?
Breath moving. This technique combines breath with visualization.
Okay.
You imagine your breath moving from your lungs all the way up to the top of your head, and as you exhale, you visualize it actively pushing out carbon dioxide.
So it's about using mental focus to amplify the physical benefits.
Exactly. Mental focus amplifying the physiological benefits of controlled breathing.
Okay, so beyond breath, mastering your thoughts seems absolutely
Some
essential.
Centaur?
Our source acknowledges that while what it calls crazy thoughts are normal sometimes.
We all have them.
Right. They become problematic when they're frequent, hard to shake,
Yeah.
and cause real fear. Anxiety can make you feel like you're losing touch with reality or even going crazy. But the good news is these are just effects of the anxious thoughts, not reflections of your actual sanity.
That's such a vital distinction, and the source highlights understanding the triggers. Many anxious thoughts are rooted in these unprompted worries, often irrational, persistent, kind of arbitrary, making you incredibly uncomfortable.
Right.
Then there are unwanted images, which are especially common in OCD, often linked to feels of violence or disaster, which then drive those compulsive actions, like constantly checking locks or the stove.
And as you touched on earlier, that intense fear of going crazy itself can become a powerful trigger.
Definitely. The distinct feeling of anxiety can make your head spin with rapid, hard-to-control thoughts, fueling this irrational fear. It creates a real vicious cycle.
So how do you interrupt these anxious thought patterns? Our source gives this fantastic 3C strategy: cease, calm, change.
Yeah, it's very practical. The first step is cease, which basically means deliberate distraction.
Okay, but isn't trying not to think about something supposed to backfire, like the pink elephant thing?
Exactly. So it's not about suppression. It's about actively redirecting your mental energy.
How? What are some examples?
Well, the source gives some really practical ones. Snapping a rubber band on your wrist for a quick physical jolt,
Oh, okay.
or engaging in some vigorous physical activity like jumping jacks, or even a complicated finger-snapping rhythm, something that demands focus.
Or even breaking into song, it says.
Right, or
Yeah.
shifting your focus immediately, maybe conjuring up a really comical image to just break the intensity of the thought.
Okay, so that's cease. What's next?
Once that frantic emotional cycle is broken by ceasing the negative thoughts, you move to calm. Your thoughts become your own again.
Great.
And this is where you intentionally re-engage those calming techniques we've already discussed. Listening to soothing music, doing those breathing exercises, guided visualization, or prayer, or meditation, if that resonates.
So it's about actively surrendering the worries and cultivating inner peace.
Precisely. And the final C is change. This is about reframing.
Reframing.
Yeah, the deliberate transformation of negative thoughts into positive ones by actively changing your perspective.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you fear losing your job over, say, a small mistake, you can proactively reframe it. Think about all the tangible reasons your employer values you and wants to keep you.
Okay.
Or if you catch yourself thinking, I'm such a failure, reflect on how you've learned from past mistakes. Reframe them as growth opportunities.
Or worrying about pleasing everyone.
Right. Consciously realize that striving for universal approval is just an impossible and, frankly, unhealthy goal.
That makes a lot of sense.
And to connect this to the bigger picture, it's also crucial to tune into your feelings.
Okay. Feelings.
Yeah, those raw subjective experiences like happiness, anger, sadness, or even feeling trapped, they play a profound role in anxiety. Getting in touch with them is just as important as managing thoughts.
It's fascinating how often feelings get ignored or suppressed, isn't it?
It really is.
Our source points out, if you ask people how they feel, they often reply with non-feeling descriptions like, oh, everything will be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think so many of us learn to avoid our feelings? Maybe from childhood messages like, big boys don't cry, or being ridiculed.
It's definitely powerful societal conditioning. But here's a profound insight from the source. The inherent amorality of feeling.
Immorality, meaning...
Meaning feelings are neither right nor wrong. They just arise. Without warning, you're not bad for feeling anxious. The power lies in how you respond to that feeling. This perspective alone can alleviate huge amounts of self-blame. It allows you to just observe the stormy emotion as it flows through you without judgment.
Wow, that feels like a game changer.
It really can be.
And one excellent way to recognize and understand your feelings, to really sit with them, is through journaling.
Yes, highly recommended. Writing out exactly what you feel without editing acts as a critical vent. It allows your mind to relax.
And reading entries back later.
That can reveal recurring patterns, maybe surprising connections, and powerfully show you the tangible progress you're making in managing anxiety over time.
Okay, so beyond mastering our internal landscape thoughts, feelings, our source pivots to something equally powerful. How our holistic daily habits profoundly shape our experience of anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, let's face it, a nonstop chaotic life can be a major anxiety accelerator.
Totally. That's where strategic activity management comes in.
Right. Our source explains that consciously planning your life rather than just reacting to it all the time can dramatically put things into perspective and significantly reduce stress and anxiety.
So what are some key strategies for that?
Well, first, keep a schedule. Our memory is notoriously unreliable for everything we need to do.
Tell me about it.
So writing down your weekly plan and diligently sticking to it can really maximize your availability and reduce that pervasive feeling of being overwhelmed.
Next, track time. And this isn't about micromanaging every second, right?
No, not at all. It's about gaining an honest understanding of where your time is actually going. Groceries, laundry, cooking, scrolling. Knowing this helps you allocate your time more effectively, reducing hidden stressors and actually creating space for relaxation.
Then prioritize activities.
Yes. It's not just about managing time, but managing your energy and focus. Our source advises allocating time to what's truly important: your health, your financial well-being, your connections.
Focusing on those priorities can open the door to a life of, as the source says, grandeur and happiness without anxiety.
It's a nice way to put it. And a crucial insight here is the emphasis on action, plan and practice.
Right. Planning without action is just wishing without doing.
Exactly. Deliberate, consistent action is absolutely essential to turn those plans into reality.
And for those prone to anxiety, backup plans are key.
Oh, non-negotiable.
Yeah.
They are designed specifically to tackle those pervasive what-if scenarios that often plague an anxious mind.
So they provide a sense of control, resilience against the unforeseen.
Precisely.
Okay, let's talk about finding instant calm in the moment. Because anxiety can feel like a runaway train sometimes.
Definitely.
Imagine getting a flat tire on the way to a huge job interview. Logically, you know how to change it or call for help, but anxiety can just push rational thought aside, right? Spiraling into catastrophic thinking.
Absolutely. The goal in those intense moments is to quickly calm yourself down so your rational mind can regain control.
So what are some immediate relief strategies the source offers?
One is positive self-talk. And this isn't just wishful thinking, it's actively giving yourself empowering talks, whispering soothing words to yourself.
Like literally talking yourself down.
Yes, talking yourself back from the brink to regain control and prevent yourself from being totally overwhelmed.
Another incredibly powerful technique is guided imagery. Yeah.
This involves intentionally imagining a profoundly calming, peaceful place. Maybe a secluded beach, a serene mountaintop.
Or that safety bubble idea is interesting.
Yeah, enveloped in a vibrant bubble of safety where no anxiety triggers can touch you or consciously bring to mind a cherished, happy memory.
And engage all your senses to make it vivid.
Exactly. The more immersive, the better.
What else for immediate calm?
For those who are religious, prayer is highlighted, a way of experiencing instant calm by surrendering worries to a higher power, really focusing on each word.
And for others?
Simple meditation can achieve a similar effect. This could involve repeating a mantra like Om, or doing mindful physical exercises like Tai Chi or yoga, or even just sitting in contemplative silence to focus a racing mind. It promotes mindful living.
And it might sound almost too simple, but practicing gratitude.
Yes, highly effective. Instead of letting your thoughts spiral into negativity during intense anxiety, deliberately shift your focus. Think about all the tangible things you have to be thankful for, big or small.
That simple mental act can bring a surprising amount of calm and perspective.
It really can.
Okay, moving beyond those immediate strategies, the crucial role of sleep just cannot be overstated.
So true. One of the biggest challenges for anxiety sufferers is that persistent difficulty sleeping,
Which then leads to exhaustion.
which exacerbates every single anxiety symptom. It's a really vicious cycle that needs to be broken.
The good news is our source offers concrete strategies here too. Start by consciously creating a sleep-friendly environment.
Right. Get electronics out of the bedroom,
Interesting.
TVs, computers. Keep the room cool, ideally between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit.
Total darkness.
Total darkness. And crucially, make sure your mattress and pillow are comfortable and supportive. Replace them if they're over 10 years old.
Establishing bedtime rituals is another key habit.
Yes, set a consistent bedtime and wake-up time, even on weekends, to regulate your body's natural clock.
And develop pre-sleep routines.
Definitely. Like a warm bath, reading a calming book, listening to relaxing music, things that consistently train your body to know it's time to wind down for sleep.
You can even incorporate simple yoga and meditation right before bed.
Yeah, the source suggests things like the straight leg raise yoga pose or practicing abdominal breathing meditation right there in bed to help relax your mind and body.
What about daily behaviors that impact sleep?
Exercise is paramount. Physical exhaustion helps prepare your body for deep, restorative sleep. Regular, vigorous exercise is best, but even light activity makes a difference.
Also try to avoid naps, right?
Yes, midday naps can make it significantly harder to fall asleep at night, and crucially, wind down before bed.
Finish work early.
Finish work early, dedicate the last hour or two to relaxing. Absolutely no laptop, phone, or work emails. Create a clear boundary between your day and your night.
And lastly, avoid alcohol and smoking before bed.
Right. Alcohol, despite maybe feeling like it helps you nod off initially, is dehydrating and profoundly disrupts sleep rhythms, fragments your rest.
And nicotine.
Nicotine is a stimulant. It'll just keep your nervous system wired and awake.
Okay, finally, let's talk about broader lifestyle changes, specifically diet and exercise for long-term control.
Yes, the source highlights a direct, powerful relationship between what you eat and your mood. The food-mood connection.
So what foods should we limit or avoid?
Well, salt, for instance. It actively depletes potassium, which is essential for a healthy nervous system function, plus it elevates blood pressure.
So less cheese, pretzels, processed meats, fast food.
Exactly. Also, be really mindful of stimulants like caffeine and nicotine.
Why specifically for anxiety?
They directly increase nervous system activity, mimicking and often worsening anxiety symptoms like shortness of breath, heart palpitations, GI problems. The more you ingest, the higher the chance of an anxiety attack.
And alcohol.
Yeah.
It might feel like it calms you down short term.
Right. It's a short-term depressant, but it's severely dehydrating and can actually exacerbate anxiety and panic attacks in the long run. It contributes to feelings of helplessness and intensifies that whole anxiety cycle.
Now, you might think the absolute last thing you want to do when you're anxious is exercise.
Huh. Yeah, it feels counterintuitive sometimes.
But our source makes a really compelling case. Exercise therapy is one of the most remarkably effective ways to manage anxiety.
It truly is. It not only stabilizes those happy chemicals like dopamine and serotonin, significantly improving your mood, but here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
What's truly profound is that exercise stimulates the production of new stress-resistant brain cells.
Wow, really?
Yeah. You could say it actively renews the hardware of your brain,
Mm.
fundamentally helping you build resilience and remain calm even in those anxiety-provoking situations.
It's like a biological upgrade you can actively perform yourself.
Exactly.
So there you have it. This deep dive has really shown us that anxiety, well, it's not a life sentence.
Not at all.
It is treatable, and you now have this robust set of tools and knowledge gleaned from these insightful sources to really navigate the challenge. An anxiety-free life truly is within reach.
That's right. But remember, gaining this knowledge, listening to this, it's just the crucial first step.
Right.
The true benefit, the real transformation, comes from practicing these strategies, putting them into action.
So we challenge you, maybe start small. Deliberately incorporate more fun, more excitement, more joy, more enthusiasm into your life, maybe starting today.
Yeah, little steps make a huge difference.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. If our minds are often our greatest enemies when it comes to anxiety, what new hardware upgrades will you install first to take back control?